and welcome to this masterclass. My name is Pooja Laklani, and I'm head of product at UST. UST is a technology company operating in over 25 countries across a broad range of industries, and we deliver digital transformation and product engineering services. So, having spent the bulk of my career in product management, I thought it would be a good way for me to contribute to IPL's efforts today with this session and share my perspective on some of the skills I think are critical for success in product management. And to be perfectly honest, my motivation for sharing these insights is really to help product managers, both new as well as aspiring in their careers to become product managers. So before we start, a little bit about me. Straight out of college, I started my career as a QA engineer actually at Motorola, and then decided I wanted to do something different and became a software developer. I did that for a while and then came across an opportunity in the startup space, which really propelled me towards a career in product management. And before joining UST, I worked across several different industries and companies, ranging from the startup space, fintech, edtech, and in the HCM industry. Like some of you, the experiences I've had throughout my journey have given me an inside view of the skills that I consider crucial for success as a product manager. And these experiences have also shaped me as a product leader and influenced the type of product managers I hire in my team. So here's a quick glimpse of what we'll discuss today. We'll discuss the core skills I think are essential, why I think they're important. We'll look at potential interview questions you might get asked and how you can level up and build on those skills. So at this point, you may have learned that the responsibilities of a product manager can differ depending on the company, right? It could be a technical versus non-technical product manager role. There's certain skills I think that are critical for all product people to develop, regardless of the industry or the work that you're doing. You know, how you can become a well-developed product manager and who can you start making an impact for immediately. So without further ado, let's get started. So skill number one, strategic thinking. So strategic thinking, it's basically a process that defines the way people think about, assess, view, create the future for themselves and for others around them. It's about developing a mindset and a thought process that focuses on the analysis of critical factors and variables that will influence the long-term success of a business, a team, a product, an individual. So strategic thinking skills are among the most highly sought after product management competencies. Why? Because product managers capable of thinking critically, logically, and strategically can have a huge impact on the business's success. Strategic thinking is the skill that separates the role of a product manager from the job of a product owner. It's product management that thinks further into the future. As a product manager, you're creating the vision, you're driving product growth. Whereas with product ownership, your focus is more on much needed functional, operational, execution-based responsibilities within your team. And therefore, great strategic thinkers are very well-rounded, and you have the ability to balance outcomes, overcome obstacles, communicate effectively. You can test against your biases, and you're ultimately a creative thinker. So for example, right, think back to the last time you participated in a planning meeting in your company. Most likely you were presented with a challenge to solve, right, or a goal that you had to achieve. And if you think about it, what were your contributions to that meeting? You know, were you able to communicate your idea in a logical way? And were you an active participant in the conversation? Did you have compelling ideas that you brought? Were you creative in trying the solution for whatever problem that was that you were solving? So for those interviewing for product management roles, I think my advice would be to be really prepared to answer questions like, describe a product you like and why. And if you want to improve your strategic thinking skills, the good news is that with the right mindset and practice, you absolutely can. If you want to improve your strategic thinking skills, one of the simplest things you can do is ask more questions, because doing so allows you to exercise your planning skills, become adept to spotting opportunities, and develop a strategic mindset you can leverage throughout your career. You can ask questions like, how can we strategically position ourselves to enter a market? Or, what's a direction for growth for each of our products or product lines or segments? The second thing you can do, I would say, is really observe and reflect, right? In addition to asking questions, it's not just about asking questions, but it's also about being able to answer them in a very skillful manner. And what I've found is one of the most effective ways of accomplishing this is to observe and reflect on your current situation, essentially a retrospect, ensuring your strategy that you're conceiving is actually grounded in facts. So for example, imagine that the company you work for has started losing clients in a particular segment. And at the same time, maybe it's gained market share in an entirely new segment, right? Because of economic factors or changes that have resulted in that. So, at first blush, it's easy to assume, right? Based on, let's say, gut feel or your intuition, that this may be the reason why this is happening, but if you do that, it can lead you down the wrong path. So instead of blindly following an assumption, I would suggest gather as much information as possible to use when crafting your strategy. So for example, this might include, in this particular instance, conducting user interviews, validating the different jobs that the customers that your users are hiring your products to perform, and really understanding new customers. How are they attracted to your product? What's the customer acquisition model look like or strategy look like? This can really enable you to tailor your marketing strategy and your product development to better serve the market needs. And I'd say, don't be afraid to consider opposing ideas as well. So, once you've landed on, let's say, your strategy, you've done your due diligence, you really have the strategy that can, help your company reach its goals, it's really good to question your assumptions and put your hypothesis through rigorous testing. Because when you do that, you can ensure you're not just overlooking other possibilities that you may have missed. It's about playing devil's advocate with your ideas, and that can really help you identify blind spots or weaknesses and equip you to defend your strategy when others ask questions, right? Because when you are committed to a strategy, you have to own it and evangelize it across your company, within your team. So it's really important to, think of it with the devil's advocate approach. It's really helped me. It can also help you sharpen your logic skills when you need to communicate with others, and allow you to uncover your own biases. We all have biases, and when you do that, you really can think from different perspectives and develop this skill and get in the habit of questioning yourself anytime you are about to make an assertion. Should you consider a different perspective? Is there another possibility that you may have overlooked? The last thing on this I would suggest is, get some formal training as well. So in today's age, everyone should embrace continuous learning. And there's so many different learning options within product management today that you can pursue. Thanks to organizations like the Institute of Product Leadership, if you need to quickly ramp up your strategy skills, you can enroll in their learning program or strengthen your product mindset with so many even free resources out there that are available in this particular area. The next skill I consider really important is the customer advocacy and market sensing. I know that these are two different distinct skills, but they are so interconnected that I just don't see how you can, excel at one and not the other. It's basically the ability to understand the customer's pain points and problems and really demonstrate the awareness of solutions while keeping a close eye on evolving market trends. And it's about building and nurturing relationships with your existing customers that are already loyal to you and who can act as a champion for your product. Obviously, this inherently means that there is a market for your problem and the people are actually willing to spend money and buy your product for the job that they're trying to do. So I know that when I am talking to anyone and assessing them, any prospective candidates, I'm looking for qualities such as empathy, the ability to understand the customer and research the market and competition. And if you're a product management candidate somewhere, be prepared to answer questions like, hey, what makes a customer interaction meaningful? Or even more direct questions about how you stay on top of market trends. And how do you inform your roadmap using analytics or customer feedback? I know for me, this has been very important because having a good sense of customer advocacy can really amplify your product's growth, your business's growth potential as a product manager. And you can get valuable feedback as well on how you can improve your product. And I would say my recommendation for anyone looking to level up in this area is first and foremost, spend time with your customers. You want to understand user and buyer behaviors and patterns. And as the famous principle, the acronym NIHITO, if anyone isn't familiar with NIHITO, it means nothing important happens in the office. So this means regularly keeping in touch with your customers, getting out of the office, be it via user interviews, on the phone, shadowing, just having a casual conversation even on a regular basis can really help you understand customers better, users better. And in my experience, some of the best product innovations I've led were a result of a meaningful customer conversation and interaction that I had with a set of customers that led to a really great solution that everybody was able to benefit from. So when I really look at the time that I take to sit down with a customer and really observe them in their own environment, it really leads to helping me understand what their pain points are. The second thing I would say is use well-known frameworks, right? Validating the job to be done. So job to be done is a very effective innovation framework that we practice here at UST that really helps us uncover any underserved or unmet market needs. And the job to be done method, it's a famous analogy that rings true when you think about this framework is that how consumers buy products and services. You don't really need a 1/4-inch drill, but you need a 1/4-inch hole. They're not just renting a movie, but they're also they're also wanting an entertainment experience. So this simple shift in perspective opens up new insights about the product's customers and the wealth of hidden opportunities, really uncovering those unmet needs. The third thing I would say in this area would be to have as many cross-functional conversations you can, with different groups within your own company, starting with sales, the account management team, the support team. All of these groups have a firsthand view and they can give you very valuable insights on how the market and how your customers are responding to your product. And the last thing I'd say is following your competition in an ethical manner is also key. You want to follow, what your competition is doing, be it the latest releases, any webinars that they're putting out, keeping an eye on press releases, or if they're a public company, I think my suggestion would be to listen to their quarterly updates and really see, where are they making the investments, where are the mergers and acquisitions happening, and really keeping a pulse on your competition to build a sense of market knowledge and insights. So the third skill I'd say is communication. And gosh, I cannot emphasize this skill enough. Communication is key. Someone once said, good communication is the bridge between confusion and clarity. So this is a very important soft skill that is paramount in any job, frankly, because it's the ability to know your audience and the ability to tailor your message and speak the language that they do with the goal of establishing alignment and a shared understanding. So it's critically important for product management. And in today's complex world, right? It's complex in the sense that it's quickly evolving. The business environments are ever changing. There's hundreds of different communication tools out there. We have hybrid and remote teams. We even have multicultural teams spanning different time zones. You know, effective communication has never been so important. And what do employers seek when they're assessing communication skills? They're evaluating you for things like active listening skills, you know, how adaptive you are. Product managers are directly responsible for synthesizing the voices and the needs of their stakeholders and their customers. And it's very important that communication hub that you establish as a product manager within the business. So as a product manager, you are the facilitator. You have the information everyone needs, which means people may come to you when they need facts and figures, and you're in charge of taking that information and sifting through ideas to create real product for real people that solves real problems. So your ability to manage your stakeholders and the people that have an interest in the product and its success is key. My recommendation for anyone looking to strengthen this skill set is to really get to know everyone cross-functionally within your company, but also get to know their role, right? Their driving factors, and understand challenges so that you can really build a genuine relationship that can translate what you learn into solutions. And one of the biggest tools you could use is storytelling. It's an opportunity to convey your point across and really build a shared understanding with your audience. And one of the things I would say is, when in doubt, over communicate. Be it your vision, your story, your goals. When delivering difficult or complex messages, especially, do it in a in-person manner if you can, instead of hiding behind an email or a voicemail. And where appropriate, follow up your understanding in writing, because this means that you are able to get out of your comfort zone and really genuinely build that relationship. The next important skill, I would say, is leadership. Every product manager and every product team makes decisions about how to evolve the product pretty much on a daily basis. So to build a successful product, this means that this product will meet all its needs, it's feasible, it's profitable, it's usable, it's viable. These micro decisions that you need to make, they need to be aligned with the broader overall product direction. And in this context, leadership means you as the product manager own this responsibility. So with respect to leadership, it's a critical element of product management. We know that. And this means you're able to rally teams, stakeholders, customers. And in my experience, it's been about creating that necessary energy that you need to turn product aspiration, vision, goals into actual results, into tangible results, measurable results. And depending on the culture of your company, employers may be looking for servant leadership characteristics. Especially true here at UST, we are big proponents of this leadership style here, where the goal of the leader is to serve. And it's different from a traditional leadership style where, you know, the leader's main focus is the success of the company or business drivers. A servant leader is someone who shares power and puts the needs of the team first and helps them develop and perform as best possible. And a good leadership trait is also about, excuse me, building self-awareness and emotional intelligence. And this means, letting go of your ego and genuinely being able to slow down just enough to listen and observe, be humble enough to learn and change if needed. That may be changing your product strategy or making small pivots to your product's direction to get to the desired outcomes that you need, right? I can't tell you enough how much I've had to do that throughout my career, where you're so set on a mission and so set on your sprint goals, and before you know it, it's like, oops, time to change because a market condition changed, or something happened that really made us make that pivot. So building that empathy and ability to not only know what someone is dealing with, but also to feel and understand them is going to be really important. And then when speaking with prospective employers, you'll often get asked about your approach to solving conflicts, what your guiding values and principles are, and how you can nurture and guide your team towards your product's vision. So it's all this boils down to, especially when in interviews get asked these questions, it's really about how you're able to showcase your leadership style and your leadership qualities. So my recommendation for product managers looking to build on their leadership is to start by becoming more data informed wherever possible, right? And I'm not just talking about quantitative data. I'm looking at qualitative data as well. Remember, you are human, so you're allowed to make mistakes. So don't lose that will to be open to ideas and experiment and learn from them. And always look for improving that efficiency, not just for yourself, but also your team. And above all, remain humble. I would say being open, creating positive change, taking responsibility. Some examples would be being passionate about your work and having a vision and focus that others can relate to. All help in helping you become a more inspiring product manager and leader. So skill number 5, execution. So execution is the ability to put in motion a plan to deliver outcomes that can create a lasting impact, right? Measurable outcomes that really move the business's needle. And it's not just about talking the talk, it's about walking the walk. So for example, you could have the best laid plan and the most well thought out strategy, but if you cannot make it a reality, there is no point, right? That's why execution is such an important skill for product management. And when you're talking to employers, they're evaluating you for execution, right? They're looking for bias for action. And actually, bias for action is one of Amazon's leadership principles. It basically means that you're not afraid to make decisions and take action, even when you face uncertainty. It's about taking action and thinking quickly so that you're not afraid to step up and make the call. I mean, think about how many times you've had to do that for those of you that are product managers or even in business, how many times you have to make decisions and that decision really kind of defines the trajectory you get on. So you have to have this bias for action, and that really means you can roll up your sleeves, you can remove obstacles and do things that are not even in your job description sometimes. So focusing on execution is so often challenging, especially for product managers, because we're such a broad function. And there are thousands of little decisions that you need to make when you're building, let's say, a new product to market, right? How are you going to, what channels are you going to market it towards? There's just so many different decisions that you have to make and hope that you're making them right. So I would say if you want to improve your execution skills, the best thing you can do is don't lose your focus, right? Remain focused. Remember, fortune favors the focus. So anything that takes your attention away, maybe it's the shiny new object, will only make it harder for you to execute. And I would say improve your decision velocity as well, right? Not just for yourself, but for your team. It could be, prioritizing features, or it could be which feature to build, or which direction to go. I mean, there's nothing worse than just sitting on an issue. I would say make a decision, and if it turns out to be the wrong one, right, you can always pivot, and most importantly, you'll have learned if it was the wrong one on what not to do next time. But definitely be open to making mistakes, but making sure that you grow from it, and we're not just stalling on the decision. So for example, I'll give you an example. It could be a simple discussion of which UI is better and should be chosen for the next feature, for example, release. So a lot of preferences could come into play here. From my own experience, my own personal experience with UI, the old company, let's say you were doing certain things a certain way, most of the time, there are tools in place like A/B testing that can help you decide which is the right direction to go. But if you have to make a decision, instead of arguing about it, focus on actually choosing a metric that will help you see which one is the better UI, right? And still apply the tools of the trade, but you still can, I guess, rise from all of that indecision making by making sure that you focus on the outcome rather than which direction to go. So again, remain focused, I would say, is the key takeaway from this. So let's put it all together. In my experience, product managers can have extremely versatile skills, but I would say these are the 5 fundamental skills that every product manager should look to strengthen. These core competencies serve as a baseline. All of these are very closely tied. So for example, if you spend a lot of time communicating effectively, you'll reap the benefits of good execution, because your team will always remember, what you said. Maybe it was your North Star that you were always communicating time and time again with every sprint, with every release, with every retrospective. Over communicating in this case pays off, because your team will remember that this is what we need to execute against. And many of these skills can be learned in the classrooms, all of these fundamentals. But I would say most are developed with experience, good role models, and mentoring. The best product managers hone these skills over years and years of defining, shipping, and iterating on products. And that means, yes, there are things that you will learn along the way, mistakes that will happen that you can grow from, to really, really craft the skill set that you need to succeed. So it's really important that you take the time to reflect on where you are personally with each of these competencies. Like doing a self-assessment every now and then is something I highly recommend. And, based on what you learn about yourself, continuously adjust your approach to mastering how you can get better at some of these areas. So I'll conclude this discussion with some levity and a good read I would like to recommend. For those that don't know who Ken Norton is, he is an executive coach to product management leaders. He's worked at Google. He's led a number of initiatives like Google Docs, Calendar, Google Mobile, Google Ventures. And this is an interesting quote by him from an essay he wrote, a decade ago on how to hire a product manager. He says, product management is a weird discipline full of oddballs and rejects that never quite fit anywhere else. And I think it was funny and interesting. But anyway, the moral of the story is that we all have to keep learning and honing our craft. And speaking from my own personal experience, product managers have a lot of superpowers, some more powerful than others, and is one of the most rewarding careers out there. So whatever you do, I would say keep the spirit of continuous learning, really learning in retrospect as well, and what you could do better to improve some of the fundamentals we talked about today. So I hope my perspective was useful to you today. Thank you all for your time and attention. Pragya, I'll turn it over to you to read out any questions from the audience.
Hello. Yeah. So, audience, you can go ahead and ask your questions in the Q&A section, or you can raise your hand so I can unmute you. So, we have a question from an anonymous user, that is, how important is MBA, online or in person, for product managers to grow position in the market? Pooja, you're on mute.
Sorry. How important is an MBA for a product manager?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a great question. I think speaking from my own experience, it has proven to be really valuable, right? But it's a combination of what you learn in business school with what you can actually apply in your real life experience. So much like anything else, right? So I think the MBA really opens up the ability to one, understand the different nuances that you may not have exposure to, right? The different cross functions of a business, finance, sales, marketing. You know, you may be strictly on the engineering side, and all of these different perspectives you just may not have the exposure to. So I think it does help in understanding, you know, what a well-run business, for example, would look like, right? What are the key metrics that are drivers for scale, for growth in any business? So I would say it's a great discipline to master, and then taking what you learn from a theoretical perspective. And these days, I think a lot of the learning that we do is very practical in a sense. Like I remember in business school, there were a lot of case studies that you would have inadvertently had to work on. So there is a lot of applicability that is immediately available to you. But I would say using what you learn and then actually applying it, be it on your own, looking for opportunities that you can extend yourself on, to see how well those approaches that you learned in school actually work is the way to go. So I would say I would recommend it. It's not a must-have. That doesn't mean that if you don't have an MBA that you won't be successful either. But if you do have the opportunity to invest in an education, absolutely, I'm all for it.
I guess this answers the question. So we have another question, like how many years of experience is required to begin with product management?
Gosh, I mean, I think, product management has evolved, right? If you go back to the history of product management, it's a discipline that has evolved from the 1930s. So, in 1930s, it's an interesting story if you guys are not aware, but brand men, right, is what was created by, I can't remember the gentleman's name, Neil something. And the idea of brand men was these people were responsible for evangelizing the company's mission, starting from brand awareness, concept, marketing. It was a function that originated in marketing, and it has since evolved. So the number of years is really subjective to your own personal aptitude, as well as your own background, your interest. It really varies. Like I have seen product managers, with very little experience, and that have grown in their career. So I don't think there is a hard set limit of this is how many years of experience you need. I think it's about how open you are to different experiences, be it from a business perspective as well. And if you were to put it in context, I would say, like in my own case, I had about 4 years of real industry experience as a software developer and as a QA engineer before I became a product manager. So I think it really varies across the spectrum. There are companies that have the associate product manager role, right, where they're fresh graduates that join the company, and then over a course of 1 or 2 years through a rotation, they become product managers. So it just depends on the opportunities that you have. I don't think in my mind there's a hard set limit of this is how many years you have to have as a product manager. Hopefully that answers the question.
So we have another question from Nimish, which says, is it important to have a deep technical knowledge for product management, especially if he or she is handling technical product?
I would say, especially if you're handling a technical product, I would say not deep necessarily, but yes, I think technical domain expertise is really helpful in making sure that you are able to ask the right questions, are able to understand the context around some of the decision making that your engineering team may be carrying out. So I would say, yes, you definitely should be looking to build that technical skill set. And that doesn't mean as a hands-on person, like you're not actually building the software necessarily, but you do understand, the inner workings of the technology and the implications of, what some of that decision making will result in, just so that you could partner with your engineering team better. And at the same time, from a product perspective, going back to communication, you can then tailor your communication, right, for your engineering team, but also to different stakeholders, be it customers. Like, how do you explain, a deeply technical subject to the average consumer if you don't understand it yourself, right? So I would argue, yes, you definitely should look to build that acumen.
So Ahmad Hassan wants to know any book which you would recommend.
Oh gosh, yes. There's so many books I recommend. I love, we're actually starting a book club here at UST. And, we are looking at several books. One of them is Escaping the Bill Trap by Melissa Perry. I think is a really good one. Hooked is a great one. Gosh, there's just so many. I love Marty Kagan's books, Inspired and Empowered. I think he's a great thought leader in the space. So there's quite a few books there for you guys to look at. And yeah, there's a whole library of books out there within product management that I'd recommend.
Okay, so we have one more question from Kavishri. It's, how is PM and hardware product companies different from software product companies in terms of complexity, understanding the market, and technical knowledge required for PM? How is consumer PM different from enterprise PM?
Yeah. Okay, so there's two questions: hardware PM versus software PM. I can't really speak from a hardware perspective because I haven't really had a chance to work in any company that was developing hardware products. But I think the principles of product management largely are the same, right? You can, I would argue, apply what you learn within product management across both spectrums. Like, it doesn't matter if it's hardware or software. And yes, there are nuances, I would imagine, from a hardware perspective, as far as, let's say, how you go to market with hardware products versus software products. But by and large, the actual product management philosophy for me I believe, is the same. And then with respect to, what was the second question? Consumer products versus B2B versus B2C, was that right? Sorry, Pragya. The second part of the question was B2B versus B2C, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there again, I think that what would differ once again is your outcomes, right? So from a B2B perspective, the enterprise level objectives may be very different from, let's say, a B2C market that you're observing. So, it's a lot about, in the B2C space, I've seen a lot about growth and scale. And so therefore your KPIs tend to differ, or your objectives tend to differ in that regard. But the manner in which you get to your goals, right, is very much the same. I've found that maybe on the B2C side, There's maybe the tool set differs as well. So you could be doing a lot more A/B testing, for example, on the B2C side versus the B2B side. Enterprise clients, it's about making sure that you're helping other enterprises excel at the end of the day, right? So your messaging, your go-to-market approach, what metrics you measure, all of that differs in that regard, but the actual discipline, right, which is the product management application, I have not found to be different. It's essentially the same thing, which is you've got to make sure that the product you're building, is usable, profitable, viable, and feasible, right, at the end of the day. So I don't think all of those things change. It's just, the metrics that change and, how you approach the market may differ in that sense.
So we have some few more questions lined up. So should we take it up?
Yeah, let's keep going.
So there's a question which says, seems like if everyone is a developer, sales, etc., do what they are supposed to do, is there a need for PM? Is PM a personality misfit if someone is biased towards tangible contribution to actual final product? How can introverts and not the loudest voice in the room be successful as PM? It's a very three-part question.
Yeah, it's a very good question. And I myself in my career has also been through a similar experience where you're like, great, everyone seems to be doing what they're doing and they kind of know where you're going and what value as a product manager am I adding to this whole spectrum all throughout the product development lifecycle. So I would say, yes, I think the product management role is such a critical function because, and I'm sure many of you have heard that the product manager is the CEO of the product, right? I don't think you are the CEO of the product, but what you are is that thought leader in your own right that is keeping a pulse on your customers' needs, the problem space, the market, how it's evolving, and the business impact and the outcomes that you're striving for. And, your development team may be so focused on getting towards, a set goal. But at the end of the day, it's about making sure that there's somebody like you present to show them, where is the North Star at the end of the day? And how are they relating to your message? And you're also shepherding not just the product development lifecycle, but also making sure that what you're building and what they are helping you build is at the end of the day going to pay off and it's actually going to solve a problem, a market need. And there's no way that, somebody that's fully dedicated into, let's say product development, engineering efforts is going to have the bandwidth or the time to keep a pulse on all of the other external moving parts. And so I think the product management function is critical to help keep all of that together and keep the focus. It's kind of like the glue in the organization, right? Like your stakeholders will look to you as the product manager and as the leader of the group to help drive some of that communication, that understanding. And if you look at the very popular Venn diagram, you're in sort of the middle of the business, the intersection of the business, the market, and technology. So I think it's an essential function, especially in the dynamic technical landscape that we're working in today, where everyone is so distributed and market needs are changing constantly, so rapidly. So I would say, yeah, you absolutely need product management. I hope that answered the question.
Okay, so we'll be taking up the last question for the day. That's from Zulfikar, which says, when doing strategic thinking, how to influence stakeholders discussion?
Yeah, good question. So I think preparation is key in this particular context, and most importantly, know your audience, right? So depending on the stakeholder group, what I would suggest, let's just say that you are about to have a prioritization meeting. And let's just make up a scenario where, one of the important priorities, one of your stakeholders is not going to make it into your next quarterly release. And you have to communicate the stuff message, right? I think preparation is key. And by preparation in this context, I mean having a conversation with each of your stakeholders on a personal level, getting to know them, getting to know what their goals are, their roles are, getting to know and understanding really well, where you can help them, like what their struggles are, right? Is going to be really important. Why? Because you want to make sure you can not just empathize and understand their position, but perhaps you can come up with a creative idea that can help them, maybe not give them exactly what they need, but that can help them, alleviate some of those pain points. So the preparation there is that you really have to invest that time up front before having that conversation so that you have that relationship, and it's a genuine relationship that's built on transparency, that you have to, again, practice some of the fundamentals we talked about today, which is communication, active listening. You have to really master all of those things to genuinely be that person that your stakeholders can look to help solve their business problems, right? I would say is do that, and you will have a much better success rate at getting your message across and building a really good stakeholder relationship.
Okay, so one last question from Neeraj. So he asks, if you were a hiring associate or senior product manager role, would you prefer a candidate with past experience of software development over a candidate who has a good understanding of market and has a good business acumen?
So software development versus good business acumen. So I think for me, my hiring philosophy has always been hire for attitude, not for aptitude. So in this particular instance, I would obviously consider the job at hand. If this is a role where we need somebody that is super technical, it's a technical product manager role, then of course that the person that has the software background has an advantage, right? But at the same time, what I look for is, like I said, someone that's well-rounded, that can demonstrate, all of the 5 fundamentals we talked about today, and really look for someone that can, has that business acumen as well, and hire for that rather than just hire for skills. Because I do think that you can learn those skills, but having the right attitude and really having that continuous learning mindset or that product mindset is so important for product managers to succeed. So that's what I would look for.
So I guess that's all with the questions for today.
Great. Awesome. Well, I hope the session was useful. It was a pleasure speaking with everybody. And thank you so much, IPL and Pragya, for the time.